Hey Ryan and Susan. Okay, Captain Underpants again. Right, we're up to chapter 4. Okay, mean old Mr. Crup. I reckon he's up here. What do you reckon, Mr. Crup? He looks pretty mean. Let's see. Do you see that old guy looking out the window up there? That's Mr. Crup, the principal. Now, Mr. Crup was the meanest, sourest old principal in the whole history of Jerome Horwitz Elementary School. He hated laughter and singing. He hated the sounds of children playing at recess. So much noise. In fact, he hated children altogether. And guess which two children Mr. Crup hated most of all? If you guessed George and Harold, you're right. Mr. Crup hated George and Harold. He hated their pranks and their wisecracks. He hated their silly attitudes and their constant giggling. And he especially hated those awful Captain Underpants comic books. Look at him. He looks very, very angry there. Look at that. Look at that. He's like, look at all those children. Wonder why he's the principal. I'm going to get those boys one day, Mr. Crup vowed. One day, very, very soon. Look at him, very angry there. I wonder what's going to happen. Okay, chapter 5, one day, very, very soon. Remember when I said that George and Harold's silly streak got them into big, big trouble? Well, this is the story of how that happened and how some huge pranks and a little blackmail turned their principal into the coolest superhero of all time. It was the day of the big football game between the Horwitz Knuckleheads and the Stubbornville Stinkbugs. The bleachers were filled with fans. There you go. See our big football game today. Woohoo! It's George and Harold. The cheerleaders ran onto the field and shook their pom-poms over their heads. A fine black dust drifted out of their pom-poms and settled all around them. "Give me a K," shouted the cheerleaders. "K," repeated the fans. "Give me an N," shouted the cheerleaders. "N," replied the fans. Repeated the fans. "Give me a chew," sneezed the cheerleaders. Achoo! Repeated the fans. The cheerleaders sneezed and sneezed and sneezed some more. They couldn't stop sneezing. "Hey," shouted a fan in the bleachers. "Somebody sprinkled black pepper into the cheerleaders' pom-poms." "I wonder who did that?" asked another fan. Look, there you go. The cheerleaders are all cheering and look at all the pepper going everywhere. And everybody sneezing. I wonder who put pepper in the cheerleaders' pom-poms. The cheerleaders stumbled off the field sneezing and dripping with mucus, snot everywhere, as the marching band members took their places. But when the band began to play, steady streams of bubbles began blowing out of their instruments. Bubbles were everywhere. Up and down the field, the marching band slipped and slid, leaving behind a thick trail of wet, bubbly foam. "Hey," shouted a fan in the bleachers. "Somebody poured bubble bath into the marching band's instruments." "I wonder who did that?" asked another fan. Soon the football teams took the field. The knuckleheads kicked the ball. Up, up, up went the ball. Higher and higher it went. The ball sailed into the clouds and kept right on going until nobody could see it anymore. "Hey," shouted a fan in the bleachers. "Somebody filled the game ball with helium." "I wonder who did that?" asked another fan. Do you want to see all the footballers slipping in the bubbles? And the band. Look at that. Look at all the bubbles everywhere. I kicked the ball and it's gone up, 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 up because it's got helium in it. It makes it go really high and float. But the missing ball didn't make any difference because at that moment the knuckleheads were rolling around the field, scratching and itching like crazy. "Hey," shouted the coach, "somebody replaced our deep heating muscle rub lotion with Mr. Prankster's extra scratchy itching cream." "We wonder who did that," shouted the fans in the bleachers. The whole afternoon went on much the same way, with people shouting everything from, "Hey, somebody put sea monkeys in the lemonade," to, "Hey, somebody glued all the bathroom doors shut." Uh-oh. Before long, most of the fans in the bleachers had gotten up and left. The big game had been forfeited and everyone in the entire school was miserable. There they are. All the bubbles, the itchy stuff. Everybody's itchy and scratching. And there's no more game today. "Boy, our feet smell bad," it says. I wonder who it was. Everyone, that is, except for 2 giggling boys crouching in the shadows beneath the bleachers. "Those were our best pranks yet," laughed Harold. "Yep," chuckled George. "They'll be hard to top, that's for sure." "I just hope we don't get busted for this," said Harold. "Don't worry," said George. "We covered our tracks really well. There's no way we'll get busted." Look at them sitting under there laughing and giggling away at making everybody itchy and all the bubbles. Chapter 6. Busted. The next day at school, an announcement came over the loudspeakers. "George Beard and Harold Hutchins, please report to Principal Crup's office at once." "Uh-oh," said Harold. "I don't like the sound of that." "Don't worry," said George. "They can't prove anything." George and Harold entered Principal Crup's office and sat down on the chairs in front of his desk. The 2 boys had been in his office together countless times before, but this time was different. Mr. Crup was smiling. As long as George and Harold had known Mr. Crup, they had never, ever seen him smile. Mr. Crup knew something. "I didn't see you boys at the big game yesterday," said Mr. Crup. No," said George. "We weren't feeling well." "Yeah," Harold stammered nervously. We went home." "Oh, that's too bad," said Principal Crup. "You boys missed a good game." George and Harold quickly glanced at each other and gulped and tried hard not to look guilty. "Lucky for you, I have a videotape of the whole thing," Mr. Crup said. He turned on the television in the corner and pressed the play button on the VCR. So there's the boys trying not to look guilty. And there's Mr. Crup. He's looking pretty mean, even with a smile. He's pressing the button to play the tape. A black and white image appeared on the TV screen. It was an overhead shot of George and Harold sprinkling pepper into the cheerleaders' pom-poms. Next came a shot of George and Harold pouring liquid bubble bath into the marching band's instruments. "How do you like the pre-game show?" asked Mr. Crup with a devilish grin. George eyed the television screen in terror. He couldn't answer. Harold's eyes were glued to the floor. He couldn't even look. The tape went on and on, revealing all of George and Harold's behind-the-scenes antics. By now, both boys were eyeing the floor, squirming nervously and dripping with sweat. Mr. Crup turned off the TV. There's the TV with them filling, it looks like the instruments they're filling with the bubble bath. And there's Mr. Crup. He looks very pleased with himself, and the boys look very worried, don't they? "You know," he said, "ever since you boys came to this school, it's been one prank after another. First you dissected frogs. First you put dissected frogs in the Jell-O salad at the parent-teacher banquet. Ew. Then you made it snow in the cafeteria. Then you rigged all the intercoms so they played Weird Al Yankovic songs, full blast for 6 hours straight. For 4 long years, you two have been running amok in this school, and I've never been able to prove anything until now. Mr. Crup held the videotape in his hand. I took the liberty of installing tiny video surveillance cameras all around the school. I knew I'd catch you two in the act one day. I just didn't know it would be so easy. Oh. Look at Mr. Crup. He seems very happy that he caught the boys. Chapter 7, A Little Blackmail. Mr. Crup sat back in his chair and chuckled to himself for a long time. Finally, George got up the courage to speak. What are you going to do with that tape, he said. I thought you'd never ask, laughed Principal Crup. The boys are looking very worried there, aren't they? Oops, might be in big trouble. I've thought long and hard about what to do with this tape, Mr. Crup said. At first I thought I'd send copies to your parents. The boys swallowed hard and sank deeply into their chairs. Then I thought I might send a copy to the school board, Mr. Crup continued. I could get you both expelled for this. The boys swallowed harder and sank deeper into their chairs. Oh no. Finally I came to a decision, Mr. Crup concluded. I think the football team would be very curious to find out just who was responsible for yesterday's fiasco. I think I'll send a copy to them. George and Harold leapt out of their chairs and fell to their knees. No, cried George, you can't do that. They'll kill us. No. Yeah, begged Harold, they'll kill us every day for the rest of our lives. Mr. Crup laughed and laughed. Please have mercy, the boys cried. We'll do anything. Anything? Asked Principal Crup with delight. He reached into his desk, pulled out a list of demands and tossed it at the boys. If you don't want to be dead as long as you live, you'll follow these rules exactly. Look at that, he's giving them the rules there. They look pretty scared. They're like, please, no. Ooh. George and Harold carefully looked over the list. This is blackmail, said George. Call it what you like, Principal Crup snapped. But if you two don't follow that list exactly, then this tape becomes the property of the Horwitz knuckleheads. Look at the rules. No more practical jokes or pranks. Number 2, no laughing or smiling. Number 3, no more, I can't read anymore. Number 4, no more Captain Underpants. Number 5, wash my car every day. Whoa. I'm going to have to see Crime and Punishment. So we'll see what happens in the next video. Mwah! Bye, guys.